Today I will be considering some particular questions related to faith and reason. One of those questions will be about bilocation. To hear more, stick around. Hello, my name is Father Ambrose Little, and I teach philosophy at the Dominican House of Studies. Welcome to Aquinas 101, Big Questions, Little Answers, the series where I do my best to answer your big questions about philosophy, theology, and more. The first question has to do with the relationship between faith and reason from the perspective of an unbeliever. Our viewer asks, what if a person does not actually believe in the existence of our God in the first place? How do we explain the absence of contradiction between faith and reason? Are there any prerequisites this atheist needs to be taught first? The first part of this question could be interpreted as asking two things. The first interpretation has it asking how an unbeliever could explain the absence of a contradiction between faith and reason. The second interpretation of this question is how we believers can explain the absence of a contradiction between faith and reason to an unbeliever. In answer to the first question, an unbeliever can come to understand the lack of contradiction between faith and reason only when he or she is able to grasp, even if only distantly, the idea that faith is supernatural and about things that cannot be proven or disproven by reason. To come to see this as an unbeliever takes a lot of effort and requires looking at the philosophical discourse of Orthodox Catholic theologians to see how the principles used to explain belief do not necessitate any inherent contradiction. The difference must simply come from the first principle of faith itself, which comes to us as a gift. You may wonder, do unbelievers ever come to this position? Yes, and more frequently than you think. There are many unbelievers, some of whom I suspect watch these videos, that see that we have reasonable or non-contradictory positions and yet find they cannot yet believe. This is a tough situation, and we should be intentional about praying for people stuck in this place. I know I do. So if what I just said describes you, know that I am praying for you. The second interpretation of the above question is how can we explain to unbelievers that there is no contradiction between faith and reason? And here we have to be careful to point out which things the Church teaches come genuinely from revelation and which do not, as well as discerning what teachings have dogmatic certitude and which do not. If we are clear about these distinctions in our own understanding of the Church's teaching, we will be less likely to fall into error and be able to show others that there is no contradiction between faith and reason. The last question from this viewer asked about whether there are prerequisites that an atheist needs to be taught first. When it comes to receiving the faith, there are no strict prerequisites, for it comes to us as a gift from God. However, if there are hang-ups that prevent us from accepting this gift from God, then it is important that those be resolved beforehand. That is a personal thing, and I cannot give a general answer to how to do this, but can only advise people to discern how to resolve these hang-ups in conversation with priests and other informed believers whom you trust. But there are things we call the preambles of the faith, and these are truths about God that the human intellect can, in principle, discover, but are nevertheless revealed by God. This would be things like the fact that God exists, that He is one, that He is simple, and other things of that sort. God reveals them because, as St. Thomas says, they are necessary for salvation, but if left up to us, only a few people, over a long period of time, with a mixture of error, would ever come to know these things. So God reveals them to make it easier on all of us to know and love Him. Lastly, I want to discuss a question submitted by a different viewer. This viewer asked, what can Thomist principles say about miracles involving bilocation of some saints like St. Vincent Ferrer? Isn't this an example of a reality debunking the principle of non-contradiction? This is a good question. Let's think about what the principle of non-contradiction says. It says, something cannot both be and not be at the same time in the same respect. That last part is really important because many people think that the principle is summed up in the idea that something cannot both be and not be. But making the distinction at the same time and in the same respect makes things clearer. So to give an example, I cannot both be a son and a father at the same time in the same respect, but I can be a father and a son at the same time and in different respects. For instance, I am a son naturally and a father spiritually. But one individual can be a son naturally with respect to one person and a father naturally with respect to a different person. Or to take another example, I can be in a location and not in a location in the same respect, but at different times. So I can be in the Vatican on one day and not in the Vatican on another day, and there is no contradiction to that. With that in mind, how does bilocation not break the principle of non-contradiction? While the Church does not have an explicit teaching on what happens in bilocation, philosophically we can recognize that a bilocating person may be in two different locations, but in different respects. For instance, St. Thomas might say that a bilocating person stays in one place but is present in a distant place through a miraculous representation. These miraculous representations may be brought about in several ways, including ways that may have physical effects. How that happens is open to speculation, but I will not indulge in such speculation here. The key is that there are possible explanations for how an individual can be in two locations at the same time, but it would have to be in different respects. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Big Questions, Little Answers. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, may God bless you and keep you in His grace. I hope that answers all your questions, but if not, please let us know by submitting your big questions using hashtag #AskAFriar on our free learning platform in the YouTube comments and on social media. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends, because it matters what you think.